Hello and welcome to Let's Talk SEO. So a big part of doing SEO is understanding how the algorithm works. And to figure that out, you need to do two things. First thing is you need to test. And so there's a lot of testing involved, which means that 99% of what you test is going to fail. But the one that's going to pass, or the one that produces the results that you intended that it would produce, or you thought it would produce, is where the goal is. And so, which is why you need to consistently test your SEO. But another part of doing SEO is understanding the algorithm or reading about the algorithm and Google's patterns, because if you don't know about those, you wouldn't know what to test. And so they both kind of complement each other. One of the things that we've tested is the Keto Score. And the Keto Score is something that was also mentioned in Google's algorithm leak. Now, in this video, we'll go through what the Keto Score is, how it works, what we've tested. In addition to that, we will also go into a secret switch that Google has built into its algorithm, something that came as a bit of a surprise that it was so blatantly obvious that Google had built this into their algorithm, that even though there was a lot of speculation around there being a switch, there's actually an API called NSR overbid that primarily helps Google quickly switch a site status from one that's ranking to one that's not ranking, or to one which will not rank. Also, Google can up the ranking of any website it wants. And so this is like a manual override, and we'll go into how this manual override works. Even though it's really hard to test if there is a manual override, but the fact that it is in the API makes it very interesting, because now we want to know what would trigger that switch, because it's going to be near impossible to know that your website was hit because someone turned on a switch or turned off a switch in some cases. All right, so I'm eager to get started. So let me just go ahead and pull up my screen here and we will start going through the slides. All right, so the Keto Score is a power prediction Google uses to rank a website without measuring all factors. And the way this works is Google uses AI to measure exactly what the page is all about and whether or not the page can be trusted to rank high. What this allows Google to do is to rank breaking stories, usually from news sites, quickly, often in a matter of seconds, while on the back end, the whole score calculation goes on. So there's a full-blown score calculation that takes place on the back end, while on the front end, you have this Keto Score that quickly ranks a website or a web page that has a breaking story, which is why news sites rank so well, which is why press releases, if done right, do so well, but only if there is something that's newsworthy. If you just have an article on a news site, that's not gonna rank. And to do this, again, Google uses AI. And I'll show you exactly how this works. So there are a few APIs that are associated with this, and I have a full list of APIs here on the right. Now, I could go through each API and tell you exactly how they work, but in a nutshell, Google is using AI to predict the quality of the page, which is a lot faster than having each individual API do its job. While it is doing its job on the back end, on the front end, you have AI that quickly analyzes a page. So it's measuring two things mainly. It's measuring the effort that's put into the page, and it's also measuring the uniqueness of the page. And that is calculated in respect to the site's established quality. So the final score, we don't know what the final score is, but based on the APIs, we know that the final score is probably is the operating term here, calculated based on the predictor value, which the AI kind of produces, and then it's the established site quality. So the site quality is good and the predictor value is high. That means it's a high Keto Score, which means that you could be right on top there in the top 2 or 3 as soon as a news article is published. Something you will see a lot of when you talk about established news sites like maybe TechCrunch, like CNN, like Fox News. But there is a caveat to this, and this is what we'll also go into in this presentation. So what we did was we ran a Keto Score experiment. And to do that, we created two very identical websites. Both websites were 5 pages. And I'll also tell you why we created 5-page websites, because there is more to this than what meets the eye. So with the first website, what we did, we created an article, and we started off the article saying that we put in a lot of effort to create this guide. So we literally put these words into the first paragraph. And then we created a very similar article, just reworded it, and put it on the other side, which was also identical. And we didn't add those words to it. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to see which one of these articles will rank the best. Now, granted that they are other factors, but we try to minimize all other factors, except for one, which I'll talk about in this video. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get back to what we found, because I have to explain a few other things. So the content score, which you also need to understand, is the quality of user-generated content. Now, you might think that this has nothing to do with your individual website, and you might be right if you're not running a if you're not actively collecting reviews, or if you don't run a site like Reddit, or you don't run a forum. But what happens is, if you have comments enabled on your blog, it could be helpful, and I've seen that it has been helpful. But if it's just low quality gibberish, then it's not going to be helpful. So user-generated content does get a score, and it's a title score, title match score of the site, a signal that tells how well titles are matching the queries. And so if you have comments enabled on your blog, which I highly recommend that you do, even though it's a lot of work sifting through the comments you get, if the quality of those comments are high, it will have value, it will add value to your site, and it will add value to the page. Now, in the context of sites like Reddit, it ensures that Google only ranks highly relevant and highly useful content from Reddit. Now, you can make the argument that most things on Reddit are low quality, but Google doesn't look at this in the context of Google. Google does not really understand what quality is. It understands what quality is in the context of the user. So if users are interacting with the content, and they're interacting with it long enough, they're commenting, they're reading, they're staying long enough on the page, that's a high quality score. And so Google sees that. Google knows that this is a quality thread on Reddit, and that thread will rank. And then you have the small personal site score. Now, score of a small personal site promotion. So when a site is launched initially, a small site, Google will propel it to the top of SERPs. If it's a 5-page site and it's very well done, you could see instant rankings right away, which is why we created a 5-page site to begin with, because we wanted to also test this theory. And so 5 seems to be like the golden number. 5 to 7 is the golden number. But I think beyond that, you're going to see your rankings drop. But you will have to expand your site at some point. And when you do that, you have to do it very tactfully, because your rankings will drop. Google's secret switch. Now, before we get to Google's secret switch, I just want to switch back to the small personal site score and talk about our results. So our results were, both sites ranked very well. So as soon as both those sites were published, we were on the first page for a low competition keyword, all right, that we were targeting. And then when we posted these two articles, the article that I've put in a lot of effort to write this article and research this article, the one that had this line in the first paragraph, outranked the other one in more ways than one. So not only for the main keyword that for which it was written, but also for several dozen other keywords. And it held the spot. It held the first page, first number one spot for several weeks. and the other one did not. And so that's a clear indicator that both these algorithms are working in its favor, and they're both kind of complementing each other. Now, I do admit that there are other factors that are in play, but we're not able to minimize those. Does this merit more testing? It absolutely does. And so if you're in the market for testing something, this is something you might want to test. So Google secret switch. Now, this is the NSR override bit. And this one attribute or API perhaps from Google enables Google to manually override rankings. So Google can see a site and say, you know what? We don't want this site to rank on the first page or even number 1 or 2 or 3 for whatever reason, and they can manually derank it. And you will not see a manual penalty. You will not even notice. Well, it will look kind of like a manual penalty in your Google Search Console, but when you check, there will be no manual penalty. And this kind of is sneaky because Google has said that doesn't really do that, but we know from experience that some sites are artificially boosted by Google or probably some other entity. But this API in itself, in and of itself, is clear proof that Google wants to have the ability to override SERPs for certain sites. Now, it could be to boost sites, it could be to reboost them, it could be to even remove them off SERPs, a lot like a shadow ban. Now, whether or not Google is using it, well, that's a controversial question. But I'm going to say that Google is using it, but it's not like it's not being used widespread. I think it's mainly a manual reviewer that sees that maybe a site is pushing misinformation, and that is what's being overridden. And so Google needs to have the ability to do that. But there could be other reasons for it, which I obviously am not aware of. But this is how the Google secret switch works. So I hope you guys found the video useful. As always, like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next video.